I'm Liv, your emotionally exhausted, chronically online host. And every week we talk about life, relationships, internet chaos, bad decisions, awkward moments, and all the things that spiral way faster than they should. Welcome back to This Escalated Quickly.
Picture this. You're in dating app limbo. You're going to bed. You think you're texting your one interest of the week. And then your thumbs do a tiny homophobic miracle of betrayal, and you send an I love you to the wrong person. That second after you hit send, the one where your chest drops 2 floors and you consider moving to Greenland, that's the hook.
If you stick around for the next 10 minutes, I promise, a messy week of texts that spiral like a sitcom plot, awkward voicemails that never should have been left, hot takes, and the exact kind of advice your best friend would give, which means it's equal parts comforting and brutally honest. You'll laugh, you'll wince, and you might even learn 2 survival moves for the next time your thumbs betray you.
Okay, cast of characters. There's Taylor, the sender, charming, flaky, texting from bed at 1 a.m., emotionally available-ish. There's Jordan, the unintended recipient, quiet, recently reactivated on dating apps, and shockingly prone to saving voicemails. And then there's the group chat, a rotating crew of friends who treat calamity like a spectator sport. Context: this is peak situationship territory. Flirty halves, ambiguous plans, and enough subtext to wallpaper a small apartment.
So here's the accident. Taylor is composing a sweet, borderline adorable message to the person they've been ghosting and unghosting for a month. They intend to type, I love your laugh, which is safe, specific, and not life-altering. But their phone, yoked to autocorrect and midnight brain fog, decides to be dramatic. Taylor hits send, the bubble turns blue. There it is. I love you. No qualifiers, no context, no parental advisory.
Immediate reaction, silence. Then 2 dots. Then 3, the kind of typing indicator that feels like a jury deliberating. Taylor tries to unsend. Many phones now have that little salvation, but not in this universe. It's delivered. Panic sets in, and careers as a rational adult go on temporary hiatus.
First dumb decision. Taylor texts, wait, no, I meant I love your laugh, lol. That is a sentence that lives in the cemetery of bad recoveries. Slap a little lol on it, and you've officially started a press conference you can't control. Jordan replies with, are you okay? Which is the polite equivalent of, what the actual heck? Taylor responds with an audio message, a shaky 17-second voicemail where they try to explain autocorrect like it's a force majeure. Then the group chat becomes active. Someone posts a supportive GIF. Someone else suggests honesty's the best policy, like we're in a rom-com montage. And my personal favorite, the friend who votes to double down and confess, because apparently we all watch too many TV shows where confession equals resolution. Bad advice pours in like it's on tap. Escalation looks like this. Jordan, confused but curious, forwards Taylor's message to a mutual friend with the caption, oh my god, read this. The mutual friend reacts with a meme that, in context, reads as passive-aggressive. Taylor sees that reaction and assumes the emotional equivalent of trench warfare has begun. Taylor then leaves a voicemail for Jordan, in which they explain their own feelings in excruciating detail, mispronounce words from panic, and cry for approximately 3 seconds before saying, I'm fine. It's the kind of voicemail that future generations will study as a case study in oversharing. Here's my chaotic hot take. We do this because technology gives our cowardice tiny outposts. Texting feels safe. You can compose, delete, and pretend you never sent anything. But when it goes wrong, we treat it like a battleground instead of a file corruption. We escalate because social media normalizes performative drama, and because admitting you were awkward feels harder than producing content for 12 strangers. Also, confession, I have done some version of this before, not the full voicemail opera, but the meant to send to my friend messages that find their way to the wrong crush. Humans are predictable in their unpredictability. But let's be useful for a second. Survival rules for when your thumbs betray you. Number 1, don't double down publicly. If you screwed up in private, keep it private. Wave goodbye to group therapy, unless you actually want a placed on mute saga. Number 2, breathe. Wait 10 minutes before responding. Your first immediate reaction is usually your most embarrassing one, so sleep on it, literally if you can. Number 3, own it succinctly. If it was a mistake, say, that was meant for someone else. Sorry. A short apology is less dramatic than a 5-paragraph explanation. A few more rapid-fire do this, not that moves. Do not send a follow-up audio confessing your entire romantic biography. Do text a boundary if someone starts weaponizing your mistake. Do take responsibility. Don't blame autocorrect as your primary defense, unless your phone has a PhD in lies. If the fallout is big, consider a short phone call. Voice normalizes things faster than 100 emoji-laden texts. And above all, don't post about it. The internet does not care about nuance. It only loves a headline. Recap. An accidental I love you is the kind of mistake that proves 2 things. 1, our phones are a public relations nightmare, and 2, we will always opt for messy theatricality over quiet repair. If today's story taught you anything, it's that awkwardness is survivable, and that your friends will either roast you or rally for you, sometimes both at once. Also, there is humor in owning your weirdness. If this episode made you cringe, laugh, or feel slightly better about your own texting horrors, do me a favor. Leave a review on your podcast app. Tell us your worst autocorrect story, rate the show, and share it with the friend whose phone is always a ticking social grenade. Reviews keep the chaos coming. And yes, I read them. Subscribe so we can meet again next week with another disaster to analyze. Leave a review, tell a friend, and maybe, just maybe, put your phone on airplane mode before bed.
If today's episode made you laugh, question humanity, or feel slightly better about your own life choices, then my job here is officially done. Stay chaotic. This escalated quickly. I'm Liv, and I'll see you next time. Be kind to your thumbs.
Today, I agreed to be a stranger's +1 and then spent an entire dinner pretending to be a real couple. Spoiler, it did not go to plan. Okay, quick hook. I said yes to a DM that began, "Can you be my +1?" and ended with me faking a relationship, lying about jobs I don't have, and taking 3 wrong phone calls in 1 hour. I promise you this is the episode where boundaries went on vacation and left me to explain our history. So here's the setup. A friend of a friend slid into my DMs at 4:30 p.m. on a Wednesday. The text was the exact amount of casual that reads like moral pressure. "My cousin's coming into town. My date bailed. Can you be my +1? It'll be fine. Free dinner." Now, I have a PhD in saying yes to free food and a minor in social obligation, so I immediately started negotiating how much dessert we were allowed before moral compromise. I said yes. Why did I say yes? The logic was thrillingly dumb. Free meal, a pity save for a stranger, and the warm glow of helping someone out. Also, to be honest, I enjoy chaotic anecdotes more than personal safety sometimes. Classic mistake number 1. Before the event, I mentally wrote a script so I wouldn't collapse. Smile, be vaguely interested, call them my partner if anyone asks, and never volunteer details. Red flags flashed like a cheap app. He didn't send a photo, the event was at a loud restaurant, and he kept saying it'll be chill, which is code for this might be exactly the opposite. But I told myself, quote, "You love material for the podcast." Dangerous hobby, dangerous confidence. 2 immediate internal monologues happened at once. You are making a story for listeners, and you are making a decision you will regret at 9 p.m. Arrival. I walk into the restaurant, and the first sign of disaster is a name I was supposed to remember, but did not. He introduced himself as Mark, and for entirely performative reasons, I called him Michael. Smooth. We sat at a table already loaded with bread and the exact amount of candlelight that screams forced intimacy. Small talk began. Where I work, hobbies, so I invented something that sounded like a job adults have. "Oh, I do creative consulting," I said, which means nothing and buys you 30 seconds without follow-up. Then my phone buzzes. Unknown number. Where are you? I'm at the bar. I fumble and say, he's in the bathroom, which now commits me to an entire mental script about my imaginary partner's bladder habits. This is the point where one lie needs a second lie just to stay upright.
The dinner is a masterclass in escalating fabrications. If you've ever told a little lie and watched it become a one-woman stage production, you know what I mean. I invented a job with buzzwords, creative consulting, digital strategy, brand identity, and he invented a job that sounded like it paid in size and conference calls. Conversation for both of us became an elaborate game of verbal Jenga. Someone asked about how long we'd been together, and I said a couple years, without realizing what a commitment that is. Now, every anecdote requires continuity. I had to remember where we met. I settled on a friend's auction night. So theatrical, very plausible, and totally fake.
There was a moment, classic sitcom timing, where I dropped a fork, and the table fell silent, like I'd committed a felony. He looked at me with this sympathetic parent face. The waiter asked if everything was okay. I smiled and said, he's clumsy, which, yes, implied partnerhood, and also implied a clumsier human than me existed, and that my moral center had surrendered to improv. The fork drop is important, because in that second my brain went two directions. 1, keep the lie alive to avoid humiliation. 2, maybe this is where you run for the door and save yourself from future wedding invites. I did neither. I stayed and kept layering the story.
And then, the unexpected guest. Mid-salad, someone at the entrance does the signature theatrical gasp every bad rom-com reserves for the ex. An ex shows up. Not a neutral, oh hi ex. This was X-level intensity, eyebrows, targeted sigh, a look that says, so that's who you brought. I had to improvise an origin story immediately. I decided in under 3 seconds that our relationship was long distance, complicated, but supported, which is the Swiss Army knife of fake relationship answers because it wards off questions. The ex marched over and launched into the kind of dialogue heavy with history. My brain supplied a nod, a supportive gaze, and a comment about my partner's travel schedule. I owe the rest of that table my ability to act like I'd rehearsed a lifetime together. Improv classes should be reimbursed later as therapy.
Reveal time. The facade unravels not because of a dramatic confession, but because of technology. And technology is a savage friend. A phone rings with a ringtone I didn't recognize, and the caller ID announces itself as Mom. He answers, and in the loudest, saddest whisper you've ever heard, says, "No, Mom, I told you I'm with Michael." Pause. Of course he said Michael. Remember I had introduced him as Michael earlier? The voice from the bar is suddenly confused, and the ex looks like she's watching a badly scripted reality show. Then the second phone vibrates. It's the original DM person checking in. Is everything okay? My brain performs triage, and I blurt the truth like ripping off a Band-Aid. I confess, I am not his partner. I am the plus one he paid $18 in appetizers to keep him from sitting alone that night. Silence. Then laughter. Awkward. Then real. And a few people clapping like it was a performance piece. Regret hit me swiftly and impressively. Hot take. Fake plus one culture is peak performative adulthood. People throw boundaries out the window for convenience, free food, or the illusion of helping. My funny confession, I did it because I wanted a story to tell, and because I underestimated how much lying multiplies the emotional labor. I also felt a tiny rush at being convincing, and then immediately felt guilty about enjoying my own drama. Here's the actual takeaway. It's fine to help friends, but your default shouldn't be to perform emotional labor that risks being dishonest. Say no if you don't want to be in that mess. Or set one clear rule. No invented backstories, no introducing yourself as someone you're not. Boundaries are boring, but they save evenings.
Recap real quick. I said yes to a DM for free food, built a tiny fictional relationship, navigated a fork drop, handled an ex, survived the technology-assisted reveal, and left with a great story and a slightly damaged sense of compassion. One practical tip, if you ever consider being someone's fake plus one, agree on a script beforehand and a hard exit plan. Also consider whether you want to be the solution to someone's problem or a participant in their avoidant behavior. Personal boundary check. Do not let the desire for a story outweigh the reality of consequences. If this episode made you laugh, question humanity, or feel slightly better about your own life choices, then my job here is officially done. If you enjoyed the ridiculousness, please leave a review. Tell me your worst +1 story, or vote on whether I should be banned from accepting event invites in perpetuity. And hey, if you want more chaos, subscribe and share this episode with that friend who always says, I can fix it. Stay chaotic.
If today's episode made you laugh, question humanity, or feel slightly better about your own life choices, then my job here is officially done. Thanks for listening to This Escalated Quickly. Catch you next week for another messy, unfiltered story. Stay chaotic.
Yes, today I somehow turned a 5-minute dog walk into a neighborhood conspiracy. Buckle up. Quick honesty before we dive. I thought borrowing a dog would be the least complicated thing I do all week. Wrong. I lied to myself like it was a short-term rental. 5 minutes, I walked out the door with confidence, and I came back with a mystery engagement ring, an accidental accusation, and a week-long neighborhood tribunal. Also, 2 people asked me for life advice after seeing this unfold. I am an excellent person to not have life advice from.
All right, scene 1, the innocent favor. Mrs. Patel from 2 doors down, the neighbor who knits sweaters for her mail carrier and knows everyone's plants by name, texts, "Can you walk Bruno for 5? Emergency, we'll be right back." I'm thinking 5 minutes. Hello cardio, hello good neighbor energy. I put on shoes that I can almost tie correctly. I grab a leash and I step outside thinking about how tiny and noble this is. I tell myself I am a responsible adult doing one small human thing. I'm also wearing sunglasses outside at 6 p.m. because I have to keep the illusion going.
Bruno is a very determined sausage of a dog, with more confidence than I possess. He has a little leather pouch on his collar, the kind you expect to hold treats, not plot points. Halfway down the block, Bruno does this dramatic roll, and for a second I'm watching his belly sun itself on the sidewalk like it's performance art. That's when my fingers hit metal. A tiny box, about the size of a Tic Tac container, tucked into the pouch. I pulled it out and froze. Slow, cinematic gasp in my head. Inside was a ring. Thin band, tiny diamond. Not cheap, not absurdly flashy. The kind of ring that says, I belong in someone else's future. Okay, instant choices. Put it back and hope no one notices, pocket it like a normal person, or film a TikTok about finding treasure. I did what every human with anxiety does. I opened my phone and typed what to do if you find an engagement ring into Google while crouching on a neighbor's lawn. The results were not comforting. Most reputable sources suggested turning it in somewhere official, which felt like overkill for a ring found in a pug's fanny pack. So I made a decision that was just the warm-up for every bad idea I'd make in the next week. I made up a story. I returned late to Mrs. Patel's porch, ring hidden in my pocket like contraband. I say, Bruno really liked the big tree. And she says, oh good, I was worried. She is trusting, which is a fatal flaw in Bruno's neighborhood. I give her a thumbs up and walk back to my apartment, thinking I'll just keep it safe until I figure out the right adult procedure. I text my friend Jenna, I found a ring. Do I become cold and heroic and turn it into the police? She replies with 3 crying laughing emojis, and of course the inevitable, are you keeping it? And then I did that thing I hate. I invented a tiny, plausible lie to cover the first tiny, plausible mistake. I texted Mrs. Patel with the energy of someone who knows how to walk back lies. P.S. I found a ring on the walk. Thought you should know. Are you missing anything? She replies almost immediately, but not with relief. Her text is a little clipped. No, but my niece has been visiting. Could be hers. Great, I think. Mystery solved. Move on. Except I had not counted on Tim, my ex who lives across the hall and conveniently overhears everything because he's emotionally attached to drama. Tim sees my text about the ring and decides loudly and immediately that he should know everything. He storms into the courtyard like a side character in a soap opera and announces, "Someone's been stealing engagement rings in this neighborhood." Suddenly, the HOA group chat, which is normally a sacred place for passive-aggressive plant advice, lights up like a stadium scoreboard. Someone posts a blurry photo of a ring they found 2 summers ago. Someone else demands security cameras, and the neighbor from down the block privately messages me asking if I've started a new jewelry collecting hobby. I am being judged by people who have never even judged my recycling bin placement. It is chaos.
The passive-aggressive HOA texts are an art form. There's the famous "anyone else notice" message that is 95% ellipses, 5% accusation. There's a screenshot of my porch with Bruno superimposed like evidence. Meanwhile, Mrs. Patel's niece is suddenly in the middle of this because apparently she lost a ring at a wedding months ago and has been blaming herself. Tim, fueled by coffee and a dramatic podcast he listens to every morning, looks at me and says, "Were you trying to frame someone?" I tell him I am not staging anything. I am literally a person who thought discretion meant stuffing a ring into a sock drawer. My defense is weak because it's also true. Heartbeat moment. Mrs. Patel asks me to come over to talk in person. For a second, I rehearse confession. The honest version, the dramatic apology, the emotional owning of my folly. Then the door opens, and she doesn't scold me. Instead, she looks me in the eyes and says, "Liv, this is embarrassing, but the ring is actually mine." Pause. She explains quietly that she'd been shopping for a replacement after misplacing her wedding band years ago, and wrapped a cheap placeholder in the pouch to remind herself to switch them later. She forgot. Everyone breathes for a second. Relief floods me like someone turning on a sprinkler just for my anxiety.
Plot twist, though. Mrs. Patel then says, with this very reasonable tone, "I would like it back, but could you maybe not tell the whole neighborhood that I carry jewelry in a dog pouch?" She has conditions. She wants discretion and also wants me to host her next bake sale as penance. So the ring returns, the HOA simmers down, Tim sulks, and Bruno gets a lifetime supply of pats for solving a mystery he had nothing to do with. I, on the other hand, have to live with having been the person who turned a small favor into an entire sitcom season. Here's the honest part. I spiraled because I hate being the person who admits mistakes. Anxiety loves to build little scaffolds of lies because lies feel like control for a second. But they don't solve anything. They just pile chaos on top of chaos. I made dumb choices out of fear. Fear of embarrassment, fear of being judged, fear of admitting that sometimes I'm forgetful and also terrible at small talk. Owning that is embarrassing, but also quietly liberating. I apologized, I baked 2 loaves of banana bread for Mrs. Patel, and yes, I told Tim to get a hobby that isn't policing neighbors. Hot take, never be the person who covers a tiny mistake with a bigger lie. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a paper cut and then duct taping your entire arm. If you mess up, tell the truth. It's shorter, and honestly, the fallout is usually less dramatic than whatever you're imagining while your brain runs a soap opera in the background. Also, people forgive more than your anxiety predicts. Except for Tim. Tim allowed himself exactly 3 apologies before returning to passive-aggressive commentary. Classic Tim. Recap. 5-minute dog walk, ring found in Bruno's pouch, panic Googling, small lie, HOA chaos, neighbor confrontation, ring returned with conditions, lessons learned, and 2 loaves of banana bread later, life continues. If you've ever made a tiny mistake and then tried to turn it into an elaborate cover story, I want to hear about it. Leave a review, tell me your most ridiculous unraveling, and I might read the best one on the show, anonymously, unless you're into becoming neighborhood lore. Also, not put your valuables in dog pouches. That's a rule out.
If today's episode made you laugh, question humanity, or feel slightly better about your own life choices, then my job here is officially done. Go leave a review, share your tiny disasters, and help other people feel better about their terrible decisions. Stay chaotic.
Okay, fun fact to kick us off. Somewhere in the company Slack, there's a screenshot of my entire dating life captioned, "Office Romance, How Not To." True story. I am the reason 5 managers now have group chat content for their lunch breaks. I mean, if you're gonna go viral at work, do it with a less personal data breach and maybe a stunt double.
Here's what we're unpacking today. The exact text I accidentally sent, the chain reaction of cringe that followed, DMs, passive-aggressive threads, HR advice I didn't ask for, and why workplaces are absolutely terrible dating pools. Plus, a hot take. Digital boundaries are modern survival skills, and I'll give you the blunt rules I wish I'd followed. Stick around if you like mortifying confessions that double as comedy and free cautionary tips.
Setup. So there's this coworker, anonymous, obviously. We'll call them coworker, because I am not trying to get sued or uninvited from holiday parties. We matched on a dating app, and it was peak flirt. Witty gifts, bold compliments, the kind of chat that makes your commute feel like the slow motion before something good happens. It was casual, low stakes, and definitely not let's put HR on speed dial. We flirted like two adults with questionable judgment and too much free time at night. The conversation quickly turned screenshotable. I was affectionate, maybe an emoji too many. They were charming, and everything felt fine. Until a calendar alert and a finger betrayed me.
The mistake. I was composing a short reply to an all-staff email, the kind of soggy announcement about updated printer rules and a Tuesday training, and my phone decided to play matchmaker with catastrophe. I had the flirting convo open, the email thread open, and then that ancient human error. Thumb drift. One tap. One wholly idiotic tap that turned my cheeky, you owe me coffee for that joke, into a company-wide confession. I hit reply all. Time dilated. You know the panic where your mouth goes dry and your brain tries to reverse a 3-second decision? I experienced that for a solid minute while the outbound indicators glowed like tiny accusatory spotlights. I sent it. The exact content? Think flirty, specific, and alarmingly affectionate, enough that people who had only ever seen me in fluorescent lighting suddenly knew my flirting cadence.
Escalation? It was immediate. First, a handful of coworkers DM'd me with variations of OMG, are you okay? And did you mean to? Then a passive-aggressive thread popped in a project channel, the one about coffee machine etiquette, with 2 people pretending it was about printers and 3 people pretending it wasn't. HR pinged me with an invitation to chat that made the calendar invite look like a guillotine. My phone buzzed nonstop. Screenshots, laughing emojis, a few terrible roast memes that turned my private life into water cooler content. There was a group chat where my team rated my romantic competence on a scale of 1 to should never be left alone with a phone. And because workplaces are nothing if not theatrical, someone started a team-building spreadsheet titled Conflict, Maybe?
Hot take time. Digital boundaries are not optional extras anymore. They are modern survival skills. Rule 1. Never have a dating app open during work email triage. Rule 2. Assume everything you type is screenshot-worthy forever. Rule 3. Separate accounts, separate devices, and for the love of all office plants, double-check your recipients. Also, stop encouraging your coworkers to be journalists. If someone has an impulse to screenshot and monetize your awkwardness into water cooler banter, you might be in the wrong ecosystem. And a bonus rule, stop responding to DM screenshots in the thread. That's how private lives become public archives.
Funny confession and lessons. Confession, I stayed friends with a coworker. We both acknowledged mutual embarrassment, laughed about the absurdity, and then agreed on strict digital boundaries. Lesson-wise, here's the short, embarrassing syllabus from someone who made the final exam public. 1. Log out of non-work apps on your work device. 2. Use a different browser profile for personal stuff. 3. Add a mental beat, literally count to 5 before hitting send. 4. Have a pre-approved apology script, short, sincere, non-explanatory. And 5. If you must flirt, do it in a way that would survive being read aloud at a staff meeting. Also, therapy helps, not because you're broken, but because someone needs to help you unpack why you thought hitting reply all was a romantic choice. I'm kidding, sort of.
Recap, I hit reply all, I sent a flirtatious message to the whole company, chaos ensued, HR hosted a polite intervention that felt like a roast, and I learned the hard way that digital hygiene is the new adulthood.
If you loved this train wreck and want to hear more disasters that double as life hacks, do me a tiny favor. Leave a review wherever you get podcasts, tell me your own Reply All horror stories and a rating, and share this episode with that friend who still texts from their work account. I want to read your catastrophes, rate them, and maybe start an anonymous leaderboard of most office-unfriendly romantic moves.
If today's episode made you laugh, question humanity, or feel slightly better about your own life choices, then my job here is officially done. Thanks for listening to the chaos, for being here for my humiliation, and for promising to never let me near your company email. Stay chaotic.
This episode, how a jacket I didn't mean to take turned into a full-blown romantic subplot I never auditioned for. This escalated quickly. Ridiculous statement time. A single piece of clothing ruined, then improved my week. Not metaphorically, literally. A jacket. One zipper, one pocket, one anonymous handoff. If you think that sounds dramatic, I promise you it only gets worse and funnier. Okay, setup. It was a Thursday, because of course it was a Thursday. Bars were loud like someone set the universe to maximum volume, and coats were piled like a textile disaster relief. I leave with my friends, we do the polite coat check shuffle, and in the chaos, I grab a jacket. Not mine. Not even close. I realized it 5 blocks later when the sleeve smelled like someone else's cologne, and their phone was buzzing like a tiny neon billboard in the inner pocket. Classic wrong jacket energy, right? But here's where the tiny mistake folds into a plot twist. Tucked under the phone was a folded scrap of paper with a messy note that said, "Family dinner, Sunday, 7 p.m. Please bring your person," with a phone number underneath. I texted the number like a responsible adult. "Hello, random jacket owner. I have your jacket. Also, who is your family?" First text, "Who is this?" Second text, "You took my jacket." Third text, which was the important one, "Can you bring it on Sunday? Family dinner. Sorry, it's weird. Bring your person." Now, a sane person returns a jacket, says sorry, sets up a drop-off. But this number decided to turn me into an accessory to their domestic drama. So I do what any polite masochistic millennial does. I ask follow-up questions. What does your person look like? Are you seeing someone? The replies were layers of emoji and semi-urgent punctuation and an actual handwritten invite photo. At this point, I'm 50% invested and 50% just avoiding my apartment. The text went from practical to melodramatic in about 3 messages, like a group chat that discovered it had feelings. And then, here's the turn that made my brain file a formal complaint. The person on the other end typed, "Bring your person? If you don't have one, could you pretend to be mine?" Pause. Imagine your phone turning into a tiny apologetic soap opera. I stared at the message like it was both a dare and a happenstance of fate. Either I ghost and return the jacket like a normal human, or I agree to be someone's fake girlfriend for a Sunday dinner where they were apparently staging some kind of emotional intervention. I could have said no. I could have texted, "Sorry, I have plans." Instead, I typed, fine. What's your name? I arrive on Sunday with the jacket slung over my arm like a responsible adult who definitely did not rehearse anything. The address is a cozy row house with photos on the wall that say, "We love each other too much. You know the energy." I meet the person I texted with, call him Sam because names are fictional here, and he greets me like I'm the final piece of a puzzle he didn't know existed. "Thank you for doing this," he says, eyes nervous, like someone who just asked the check-splitting question and is now trying to fold in family emotions. His mother appears and hugs me as if we've been dating for 3 years. His aunt asks about my job. His grandmother blesses me like I'm a caretaker of sentimental crockery. The stakes were apparently very real. And here's me, improvising a biography. "Oh, I'm in digital marketing-ish. I freelance. I love pasta. And animals?" Each sentence was a culinary and emotional dodge. People asked how we met. "Oh, Tinder." And I nodded like a professional improv actor. I felt like I was guest starring in a melodrama I didn't audition for. At one point, Sam's uncle launches into a very specific family origin story about how the family does relationships, and bless them, they love confrontation, like it's a hobby. I fielded questions about commitment timelines, future grandchildren, and whether we fight. I mostly smiled and used phrases like, "We're in a good place," and "We communicate."
which are flexible and non-committal and perfect for people who are secretly making up a life on the fly. At dinner, I realized why I didn't just leave. I'm allergic to awkwardness. Also, I enjoy avoiding confrontation like it's a competitive sport. There's a selfish part of me that loves being the hero in small disasters. I'll fix this. I'll be polite. I'll make it not weird. It sounds noble until you realize the noble thing is basically gaslighting yourself into emotional labor for strangers. So, confession time. I stayed because I wanted to be liked that evening more than I wanted to be comfortable. I wanted to be the plausible girlfriend in the living room narrative. Also, the lasagna was really good. Always keep the lasagna level in the calculus of life choices.
Hot take: modern dating culture is a liability for simple mistakes. We text everything, which is efficient and also accelerates emotional snowballs into avalanches. A wrong jacket becomes a misdelivered identity, which then becomes someone's emotional rehearsal space. People avoid setting boundaries so they can avoid awkward two-sentence texts, and that avoidance invents theatrical moments. Fake girlfriends, surprise family rituals, and entire emotional economies built on not saying no. If we were better at small, polite rejections, we'd have fewer manufactured dramas. Also, here's the spicy bit. I kind of admire the audacity. Someone looked at their own awkwardness and tried to recruit me into a solution. That's chaotic and a little brave, even if it was wildly inconvenient for my Friday night plans. Recap: I grabbed the wrong jacket, found a mystery note and a number, engaged in a brief but intense text romance with logistics, and ended up as the guest star in someone else's family drama. Lesson learned: small choices ripple. Also, say no when you mean no. Also, if you wind up improvising a relationship for lasagna, at least get the recipe. If this story made you laugh, or cringe, or feel marginally better about your own poor choices, please leave a review. Tell me your worst accidental RSVP, or the time you pretended to be someone's +1 and live to tell the tale. Reviews help other humans find chaotic, tiny disasters they can relate to.
If today's episode made you laugh, question humanity, or feel slightly better about your own life choices, then my job here is officially done. Thanks for listening. Stay chaotic.
I made a fake dating profile to DM my crush. That sentence exists in the timeline now, so hi, my name is Liv, and yes, this escalated quickly. In my defense, it felt like an experiment, not a full-blown identity crisis. Also, curiosity and a very bored Thursday night are terrible co-conspirators. Let me explain how a petty, harmless test turned into 7 days of lies, an accidental co-conspirator, and a public reveal that I would rather forget, but will absolutely tell you about anyway. Hook. Ridiculous statement. Then, context. So yes, I catfished my own crush. Why did that feel reasonable? Because he was this impossibly chill barista / gig economy poet type who liked cryptic captions and posted 3 vague sunset photos a month. He was a puzzle, and I'm the kind of person who will shake a jigsaw box to see if a missing piece shows up. I wanted to know, would he bite if someone mysterious slid into his DMs? Ego, entertainment, and the exact wrong kind of boredom were the stakes here. Also, my friend group would later rate this as peak Liv energy.
Section 1, Setup, the Plan, and the Flirtation. I created Avery, gender neutral, annoyingly interesting, and somehow too photogenic for someone who only exists in my head. The profile photos were a ridiculous collage. 1 blurry hiking shot I stole from royalty-free stock, 1 artsy black and white espresso cup picture, and a deliberately mysterious silhouette. Bio, 2 lines. Collector of mediocre puns, coffee is life, sarcasm is survival. Peak human mystery, honestly. I remember typing the first message like an author refuses to write a bad opening line. Hey, your sunset photo looks like a good place to lose my keys. Do you mind checking? It was stupid, and it landed. He replied with something very charmingly indifferent. Depends. Are your keys vintage or just emotionally unavailable? I laughed out loud at 2 a.m. and then kept going. I escalated in tone and absurdity because the dopamine hit of being a mystery is a very specific drug. I reenact a couple of actual DM vibes here. Not verbatim, but close enough so you get the energy. Me as Avery. Vintage, probably fancier than me. Crush. Then let's both be endangered antiques and grab a coffee.
And suddenly a text thread existed where I was what I wasn't, and he was real. The thrill of the flirtation was intoxicating, like stubbing your toe on a step you knew was there, but experiencing the pain anyway because you didn't look.
Section 2, Complications and Group Chat Chaos. Enter my best friend, who I will call Maya because she deserves a name that sounds like a rom-com side character. Maya saw the thread on my phone while I was strategically typing and then executed the most dramatic eyebrow raise of her life. She could not let this be just a live thing. Within an hour, she was invested, less as a partner in mischief and more like a jealous director. She demanded photos, coached my responses, and then made a choice. She messaged him from her own account, pretending to be someone who knew Avery, just to stir the pot. Immediately, the lie multiplied. I was texting as Avery, reading Maya's texts about Avery, and trying to maintain plausible deniability while also sending memes to myself to feel less guilty. I will admit now that the group chat became a live reality show. Dramatic screenshots, over-dramatic polls about whether I should reveal myself, and a ridiculous spreadsheet with exit strategies ranked by humiliation level. Spoiler, I should have listened to strategy 1. Don't do the thing. But instead, I agreed to a casual meetup because I am terrible at boundaries and also apparently love panic.
Section 3. The confrontation, reveal, and aftermath. So the meetup was set. Coffee, which in our world means a public place with witnesses and moral ground. I showed up wearing something that said, "I am not a catfish," but probably read as mildly suspicious. I had a plan, which is generous to call it a plan. The plan hinged on Maya creating an excuse to delay, me improvising as Avery for 5 minutes, then pulling the Band-Aid off in a dramatic, charming way. That did not happen. He walked in, looked exactly like his photos, less filtered, more human, and suddenly my flirty text persona felt like a costume I couldn't remove. At one point, I actually said aloud, "I'm Avery," because my brain thought honesty in the present tense would solve all prior sins. He blinked and asked, "Wait, are you joking?" I panicked and produced the worst excuse. "I thought you liked being mysterious, so I tried to be mysterious back." It was both a terrible explanation and technically true in the least helpful way. He laughed, not unkindly, but with a distance that stung. And then Maya intervened, admitting everything like a spectator barging into an improv show. The fallout was immediate. Awkward small talk, a very civil "we should be honest" moment, and then someone suggested we all get pastries like nothing catastrophic had happened. The truth landed not as a grand reveal, but as an uncomfortable lesson in how small deceptions magnify when other people get involved.
Recap and hot take. Here's the takeaway, and I say this both as someone who made the mistake and as someone who will remind you not to try it. Digital sleuthing and identity games feel like control, but are mostly just theater. They make you feel clever for a minute and dumb for a week. My hot take? Curiosity is not an excuse, and if you're tempted to manufacture a story to test someone's interest, you're testing the wrong thing. The ethics are messy. People get hurt, and you end up apologizing to pastries. Also, full disclosure, he and I didn't become dramatic frenemies or star in a sitcom. We had a few real conversations after that. They were awkward, and then life carried both of us on separate, slightly less mysterious paths. If you want to laugh at my bad choices, fine. If you want a rule to take away, honesty is boring but less complicated. Please don't catfish people for sport. If you must do something petty, maybe buy yourself a book instead.
If this episode made you giggle, cringe, or reconsider your own digital shenanigans, do me a favor. Leave a review wherever you get your podcasts and tell me your most ridiculous dating experiment. I want the receipts. Screenshots not required, but the story obviously helps fuel the chaos. Your reviews help other people find the show and keep me from making even more mistakes alone in my apartment. So hit that rating, leave a comment, and maybe mention if I've officially crossed into legend or cautionary tale. I'm Liv, your emotionally exhausted, chronically online host, and every week we talk about life, relationships, internet chaos, bad decisions, awkward moments, and all the things that spiral way faster than they should. If today's episode made you laugh, question humanity, or feel slightly better about your own life choices, then my job here is officially done. Stay chaotic.
Okay, let's get this out of the way. One time, I literally staged a haunting so a guy who ghosted me would feel bad. Yes, staged a haunting. And yes, it got chaotic in ways I did not predict. By the end of this episode, you'll hear every ridiculous move I made, the hot takes I stand behind, and the single honest lesson I didn't want to learn but did anyway. So here's what you're getting. A cringe confession, a strategic plan that was more theater than revenge, a series of spectacular misfires, and one very awkward reunion where everything collapsed into laughter and apology. If you love messy dating tales or you need something to make your own bad choices feel reasonable, you're in the right place. I promise practical reminders too, like don't impersonate people and maybe don't recruit your roommate as a professional dramatic prop, but mostly laughs. Here's the setup. I met Noah, yes, we will call him Noah, at a lower stakes trivia night. Half-hour date, top-tier chemistry, 2 overpriced cocktails, and that feeling where your brain insists this is the start of something. We walked, we debated whether pineapple belongs on pizza like it decided the fate of civilization, and he kissed me on the forehead when I said something uncool and vulnerable. It was perfect for a half hour. Then, silence. Phone, ghost town. No text, no voicemail, the kind of nothing that makes you invent entire lives for a person in your head. You know the spiral. Did I say something weird? Did his cat run away? Was he abducted by aliens? My brain immediately made a conspiracy board. I did the thing I always warn my friends about. I turned to social performance. If silence was a judo move, I wanted to throw it back with spectacle. That's where Operation Scene was born, a multi-act passive-aggressive campaign designed to manufacture guilt without direct confrontation. Cheeky, creative, and very small-time petty. Act 1, accidental public texts. I sent a very specific message, which I accidentally left on my group chat visible to people who could screenshot and make a montage that said, quote, "Wow, just realized I might be the clingy one. Note to self, buy fewer feelings online." Then I tagged none of them. The purpose? Create mild social curiosity. Make it look like I'm living my best chaotic, inconvenient life, not lying awake hoping my phone buzzes. Act 2 gets weirder. I ghosted the ghoster with reverse ghosting. I sent a LinkedIn-style message, faked a recruiter outreach, where I congratulated him on a mysterious promotion and said I'd love to connect about, quote, exciting senior synergy opportunities. Formal, fake, and absolutely ridiculous. The aim was to make him wonder if he missed out on something and might respond out of curiosity or mild irritation. Act 3. Enlist the roommate. My roommate, bless her dramatic soul, agreed to be my sulky ex in a public Instagram story where she pretended to be annoyed that I'd stolen a sweater. She texted our mutual friends with a fake jealousy rant that looked oddly real if you squinted. The goal? Establish social proof that I am in fact an undesirable catch, so impressive it causes jealousy. Logic? Confuse him into responding. It was theater. Very cheap theater. And then, because life loves irony, the escalation. First, a delivery mix-up. I ordered a bouquet labeled, "Sorry I ditched you," to a random address that I thought was his building. The delivery guy rang our buzzer, my roommate opened the door in a bathrobe, and an entire old lady birdwatching club witnessed the bouquet situation while I hid under a blanket pretending to be asleep. Then I left a voicemail, very jealous, very dramatic, where I said something like, "Oh, so now you care? Cute." And in a stunning display of incompetence, I sent it to my boss as a voicemail instead of to him. My boss replied with a thumbs up and a gif of a seal. I took that as judgment and moved on to Plan C, the accidental mutual friend confrontation, orchestrated by the roommate who may have gone one step too far and actually told him that I was seeing someone new at a party he was at. He texted back, baffled and curious, and finally asked if we could talk. Mission accomplished? Kind of. When he resurfaced, the reunion was a 3-act rom-com, minus the sweeping cinematography.
We met at a cafe that had suspiciously supportive baristas. He looked apologetic, confused, and frankly relieved to be back in human form. I confronted him with the least direct question possible. So, did you get eaten by a platypus or just your phone? He admitted he'd been overwhelmed and then, honestly, terrible at communicating. We both laughed, mostly at my fairy tale of petty scheming. And then I said something I didn't expect. I actually felt embarrassed.
Hot take time. People ghost for a million reasons. Convenience, avoidance, boredom, genuine fear of confrontation. But ghosting is more about the ghoster than the ghosted. Red flags worth noticing. If someone avoids simple, respectful communication repeatedly, that's a pattern, not a phase. If they only show up when it's fun for them, they're not figuring out feelings, they're demonstrating priorities. And the lesson I learned the messy way, theatrical revenge is emotionally satisfying for approximately 47 seconds. And then it leaves you with new, small humiliations to explain to your friends.
So, the real ending of Operation Scene, we had a conversation where I admitted my passive aggression, he admitted he was bad at closure, and we both agreed it was not the healthiest way forward. I forgave him, he apologized, I forgave myself for being theatrical, and then, because of course, I made a group chat poll about whether I should ever do something like this again. The majority voted no. Lesson learned. Kind of. Don't impersonate recruiters.
Quick recap. Half hour, perfect date. Radio silence. Operation Scene. Public texts, fake recruiter message, sulky roommate, a misdelivered bouquet, and a voicemail to my boss. Awkward reunion, and a lesson about dignity and better ways to ask for closure. If you enjoyed the chaos, excellent. If you're aghast, also excellent. I am too. Now do me a favor. If this made you laugh or made you feel marginally better about your own questionable impulses, leave a review and tell me your own petty, embarrassing operations. I want the receipts. Leave a review and keep the group chat alive.
If today's episode made you laugh, question humanity, or feel slightly better about your own life choices, then my job here is officially done. Follow the show, drop a review, and share your own tiny vendettas. Anonymously is fine. Legally preferred. Stay chaotic.
Okay, let's get this out of the way. One time, I literally staged a haunting so a guy who ghosted me would feel bad. Yes, staged a haunting. And yes, it got chaotic in ways I did not predict. By the end of this episode, you'll hear every ridiculous move I made, the hot takes I stand behind, and the single honest lesson I didn't want to learn but did anyway.
So here's what you're getting. A cringe confession, a strategic plan that was more theater than revenge, a series of spectacular misfires, and one very awkward reunion where everything collapsed into laughter and apology. If you love messy dating tales or you need something to make your own bad choices feel reasonable, you're in the right place. I promise practical reminders too, like don't impersonate people and maybe don't recruit your roommate as a professional dramatic prop, but mostly laughs. Here's the setup. I met Noah, yes, we will call him Noah, at a lower stakes trivia night. Half-hour date, top-tier chemistry, 2 overpriced cocktails, and that feeling where your brain insists this is the start of something. We walked, we debated whether pineapple belongs on pizza like it decided the fate of civilization, and he kissed me on the forehead when I said something uncool and vulnerable. It was perfect for a half hour. Then, silence. Phone, ghost town. No text, no voicemail, the kind of nothing that makes you invent entire lives for a person in your head. You know the spiral. Did I say something weird? Did his cat run away? Was he abducted by aliens? My brain immediately made a conspiracy board. I did the thing I always warn my friends about. I turned to social performance. If silence was a judo move, I wanted to throw it back with spectacle. That's where Operation Scene was born, a multi-act passive-aggressive campaign designed to manufacture guilt without direct confrontation. Cheeky, creative, and very small-time petty.
Act 1. Accidental public texts. I sent a very specific message, which I accidentally left on my group chat visible to people who could screenshot and make a montage that said, quote, Wow, just realized I might be the clingy one. Note to self, buy fewer feelings online. Then I tagged none of them. The purpose? Create mild social curiosity. Make it look like I'm living my best chaotic, inconvenient life, not lying awake hoping my phone buzzes. Act 2 gets weirder. I ghosted the ghoster with reverse ghosting. I sent a LinkedIn-style message, faked a recruiter outreach, where I congratulated him on a mysterious promotion and said I'd love to connect about, quote, exciting senior synergy opportunities. Formal, fake, and absolutely ridiculous. The aim was to make him wonder if he missed out on something and might respond out of curiosity or mild irritation. Act 3. Enlist the roommate. My roommate, bless her dramatic soul, agreed to be my sulky ex in a public Instagram story where she pretended to be annoyed that I'd stolen a sweater. She texted our mutual friends with a fake jealousy rant that looked oddly real if you squinted. The goal? Establish social proof that I am in fact an undesirable catch, so impressive it causes jealousy. Logic? Confuse him into responding. It was theater. Very cheap theater. And then, because life loves irony, the escalation. First, a delivery mix-up. I ordered a bouquet labeled, "Sorry I ditched you," to a random address that I thought was his building. The delivery guy rang our buzzer, my roommate opened the door in a bathrobe, and an entire old lady birdwatching club witnessed the bouquet situation while I hid under a blanket pretending to be asleep. Then I left a voicemail, very jealous, very dramatic, where I said something like, "Oh, so now you care? Cute." And in a stunning display of incompetence, I sent it to my boss as a voicemail instead of to him. My boss replied with a thumbs up and a gif of a seal. I took that as judgment and moved on to Plan C, the accidental mutual friend confrontation, orchestrated by the roommate who may have gone one step too far and actually told him that I was seeing someone new at a party he was at. He texted back, baffled and curious, and finally asked if we could talk. Mission accomplished? Kind of. When he resurfaced, the reunion was a 3-act rom-com, minus the sweeping cinematography. We met at a cafe that had suspiciously supportive baristas. He looked apologetic, confused, and frankly relieved to be back in human form. I confronted him with the least direct question possible. So, did you get eaten by a platypus or just your phone? He admitted he'd been overwhelmed and then, honestly, terrible at communicating. We both laughed, mostly at my fairy tale of petty scheming. And then I said something I didn't expect. I actually felt embarrassed. Hot take time. People ghost for a million reasons. Convenience, avoidance, boredom, genuine fear of confrontation. But ghosting is more about the ghoster than the ghosted. Red flags worth noticing? If someone avoids simple, respectful communication repeatedly, that's a pattern, not a phase. If they only show up when it's fun for them, they're not figuring out feelings, they're demonstrating priorities. And the lesson I learned the messy way, theatrical revenge is emotionally satisfying for approximately 47 seconds. And then it leaves you with new, small humiliations to explain to your friends. So, the real ending of Operation Scene. We had a conversation where I admitted my passive aggression, he admitted he was bad at closure, and we both agreed it was not the healthiest way forward. I forgave him, he apologized, I forgave myself for being theatrical, and then, because of course, I made a group chat poll about whether I should ever do something like this again. The majority voted no. Lesson learned. Kind of. Don't impersonate recruiters. Quick recap. Half-hour perfect date. Radio silence, Operation Scene, public texts, fake recruiter message, sulky roommate, a misdelivered bouquet, and a voicemail to my boss, awkward reunion, and a lesson about dignity and better ways to ask for closure. If you enjoyed the chaos, excellent. If you're aghast, also excellent.
I am too. Now do me a favor. If this made you laugh or made you feel marginally better about your own questionable impulses, leave a review and tell me your own petty, embarrassing operations. I want the receipts. Leave a review and keep the group chat alive. If today's episode made you laugh, question humanity, or feel slightly better about your own life choices, then my job here is officially done. Follow the show, drop a review, and share your own tiny vendettas. Anonymously is fine. Legally preferred. Stay chaotic. Today, I did a thing that sounds like a dare and ended like a mini-series. I handed my dating app over to my group chat for an entire week. No vetoes, no private therapy, just 3 friends with 0 professional qualifications and infinite opinions. Puggle up. This escalated quickly, and I promise it's safely ridiculous. Here's the promise. If you're cranky, drained, or need to feel better about your own texting skills, this is for you. Over the next 20 minutes, worst picks, and why my friends love chaos, DM openers so aggressively mediocre they might be performance art, a 2 a.m. strategy meeting that included a fabricated backstory and too many gifts, and an IRL reveal that was equal parts roast and surprisingly sincere. Also, boundaries and consent chat, because we're not completely monsters. You will laugh, you will judge, you might learn something about your own digital boundaries. That's the deal. Rules and cast, because framing is necessary when you put your love life on the auction block. Rule 1. I gave them access, but I set a hard rule. No revealing private message content without explicit permission. Rule 2. They could swipe, match, and draft messages. Rule 3. I could only step in if something unsafe or clearly unethical happened. Which, spoiler, I very nearly did because of panic scrolling at 3 a.m. The board members. Friend A is the romantic. She's aggressively positive and will ghost anyone who doesn't use at least 3 heart emojis in the first 10 messages. Friend B is the strategist. Thinks dating is a game theory problem and recommends putting aspiring plant mom in the bio because it's low effort and charming. Friend C is the wild card. Their advice is half roast, half performance piece, and 100% gift-based. Together, they function like a small chaotic corporation. Group chat CEO.
Round 1 disaster, the first batch of matches read like an audition for an awkward bio competition. They swiped right on the guy whose bio literally said, if you like long walks, I'm allergic, but I'll sit in the park. And they championed a profile where the only photo was a blurry dog paw. They loved a man who listed his job as entrepreneur and then explained he means he entrepreneurs on weekends. I read the choices while the chat filled with reaction gifs and carefully curated shade. My friends did dramatic readings, like a tiny theater troupe, and then started rewriting bios into performance poetry. It was deeply unhelpful and wildly entertaining. I laughed, I facepalmed, and started to feel like I'd accidentally enrolled in a reality show. Then came the midnight strategy session, which is where chaos matured into reckless creativity. At 2 a.m., we held a planning meeting. Yes, that's a real thing now. And the agenda included optimal emoji mix, whether to mention hobbies or to invent them, and whether to craft a mysterious backstory to increase dating market value. Friend B proposed a spreadsheet. Friend C proposed a fake minor scandal. Once I got lost on a ferry, but it's a whole mood, as a hook. Friend A drafted DM openers that ranged from, hey, fellow coffee survivor, to a line that started with, do you believe in signs? And ended with an interpretive emoji sequence. We tested openers like they were product features. The winning DM, and yes, there was a winner, started with a complaint about mediocre tacos and then pivoted to, what's your comfort food confession? It was bizarrely effective and also deeply my friend's energy. We spent 3 hours optimizing and arguing about whether comfort food confession was charming or creepy.
The DM meltdown was the scene where everything got spicy in the most suburban way possible. Screenshots started flying into the chat, his replies, our follow-ups, my friends' color-coded reaction threads. At one point, a match accidentally added his roommate to the group message because he misclicked. We all watched in a mixture of horror and giddy fascination. Friend C convinced someone to send a voice note that was basically a comedic stand-up bit about bad dates. Friend A tried to be sincere, which led to a 10-message thread about vulnerability, and then an awkward silence.
Friend B performed forensic message analysis and declared that a 3-dot typing indicator for too long meant they're either crafting a poetic response and then was abruptly proven wrong when the other person sent a single GIF of a raccoon. It felt like we'd curated a live soap opera, and I alternated between mortification and the kind of grateful relief that comes from laughing at your own chaos. Through it all, I kept one rule firm. If anything felt unsafe or creepy, we shut it down, blocked the person, and I stepped in. Consent and safety were non-negotiable, even when everything else was a joke. The in-person reveal was the wild card, our group chat's season finale. We agreed to meet the top match at a cafe, and I showed up while my friends hovered like a Greek chorus, offering live commentary that ranged from supportive to unfiltered. The date was surprisingly normal. He was late, awkward, and kind of sweet in a way that didn't convert any of my friends, but did make me pause. What I didn't expect was a real moment of clarity. The experiment forced me to articulate what I actually wanted, not what would make a group chat laugh. There was also the embarrassment of hearing my friends critique my body language in real time, which, to be fair, is why we love them. But then they did something unexpectedly kind. After the date, one friend sent a private message checking in on how I felt, not how it would play in the group. That small moment reminded me why we tolerate the hot takes and the chaos. Because beneath the ridiculousness, friendship can be protective and grounding. The takeaway? Letting people be involved is funny and healing in measured doses, but you should never cede consent, privacy, or personal safety. If something crosses your line, speak up. Your agency is not negotiable.
Quick recap before we go. Best bits, the terrible bios, the comfort food confession DM, don't knock it till you try it, and the performance art voice note. Lessons, set rules, protect consent, and maybe don't let friends see write your dating profile if you want to keep your dignity. And an actual surprising lesson, experiments like this can reveal what you value when the noise drops. Authenticity, safety, and friends who check in privately when public jokes are over. If you have a group chat disaster or experiment of your own, I want to hear it. Leave a review, tell us your worst DM, and tag the friend who would absolutely sabotage your love life for comedic effect. Please be kind online and keep people's private messages private unless you have permission. Boundaries are not boring. They're necessary.
If today's episode made you laugh, question humanity, or feel slightly better about your own life choices, then my job here is officially done. If you enjoyed the chaos, please leave a review and share this episode with someone who needs to laugh at other people's reckless decisions instead of making their own tonight. Follow the show so you don't miss future experiments in emotional oversharing. Stay chaotic. Welcome to This Escalated Quickly.
So, here's the ridiculous moment. I open my phone, and instead of the usual algorithm nonsense, I'm staring at a group chat whose title is a string of heart emojis and the name of my ex. And then, worse, there I am listed as a member. For like 6 seconds, I think my phone is broken. Then I realize someone very confidently tapped the wrong contact, and the universe just handed me a front row seat to mess. Promise, if you stick around, I will tell you how curiosity turned me from accidental audience member into the group's unofficial therapist, complete with passive-aggressive emoji diplomacy, meme triage, and 1 week that could have been condensed into a tragic comic play.
Section 1. Backstory setup. This is where we set the scene, because context is a lie if it's boring. The players, me, obviously, my ex. I'll call him my ex because calling him anything else feels like emotional capitalism. And a small supporting cast I'll label new girlfriend, overly helpful friend, and silent but judging emoji. The ad happens after a dinner where my ex texted the group a photo of his dessert and apparently meant to add his girlfriend. Instead, he added me. Maybe he was thinking closure. Maybe his phone hates him. We'll never know. I tap in because I am 100% a person who will watch the train wreck just to see which way the smoke goes. I know, it's a flaw. But here's the thing. For 5 minutes I plan to lurk. For 5 minutes only. That plan lasted about 72 hours.
Section 2. The first intervention. The chat starts civilly, heart emojis, cute, the usual.
Then someone posts a photo of a takeout container and a text that reads, "He always eats cold food. Is that a me problem?" Enter passive-aggressive territory. A cascade of ghosting vibes followed. Vague comments, elliptical texts, and the emoji equivalent of side-eye. I do what any irresponsible, borderline professional meddler would do. I send a meme. Not a mean one, a silly one that peels the tension off like tape. Suddenly, there's a flurry of laughing reacts and two people earnestly debating whether senders of vague texts mean to be dramatic or just punctuation challenged. This is where my hot take sneaks in. People ghost because they refuse to add punctuation to their feelings. Full stop. Literally. If you wrote, "I'm upset," instead of "I'm upset maybe," we'd have fewer soap operatic text cliffhangers. That hot take gets a surprising number of thumbs up, which inflates my confidence dangerously. I start translating vague texts like a very small, very online United Nations. "Are you mad?" becomes, "Can you please say specifically what made you mad so we can resolve or schedule a meltdown?" That's when someone performs the confession, the kind that opens with, "This is embarrassing, but," and closes with an overshare about a nap that turned into crying. Now the guilt spiral is live. I have two options: keep being a lurker or throw in a little life coaching. I pick the latter. Welcome to meme diplomacy. One well-placed gif, one "you're not alone" line, and suddenly people are DMing me for advice. I am not certified, but I do have a lot of sarcasm and a Spotify playlist titled Therapy But Make It Chaotic.
Section 3. Escalation to peak chaos. Things escalate the way they always do in group chats. One accidental reply all turns into a reveal. Someone posts a screenshot meant to be private, and it includes a text that reveals a miscommunication about a weekend plan. And suddenly, feelings. The well-meaning DM that was supposed to soothe actually reads like a Yelp review of heartbreak. I try to step in with a gentle, "This might be a misunderstanding," and what follows is a 7-message thread that oscillates between "I'm fine" and "I am not fine," with gifs of kittens and passive-aggressive heart emojis. At around message 32, the person who originally added me realizes their mistake and apologizes, but the apology contains the phrase, "I didn't mean to add her," which in group chat law is a categorical admission of guilty curiosity. The climax. A heartfelt, slightly too long paragraph from new girlfriend about insecurity. An accidental ping to a family member that contains the phrase, "not sure about him," and then radio silence. I, at this point, the group's unofficial therapist, because someone keeps asking, "What should I do?" And I keep answering like a person who believes punctuation can cure a lot of things. I give advice that is 40% empathy, 40% GIF, and 20% set a boundary and then get tacos. It works oddly well. Someone says, "You sound like my best friend," and I almost accept this as a career pivot. Then I remember I have no degree, and that I once gave someone advice to unfriend an ex, and they later texted me to say it worked, which is both vindicating and terrifying. Reflection and funny confession. Lesson number 1. We stay in these messy loops because they feel like connective tissue. Drama is a social glue, and sometimes we'd rather have a chaotic conversation than nothing at all. Funny confession. I stayed because I liked being needed. Also because the narrative arc was so deliciously awful, I couldn't look away. Would I do it again? 100% yes, which should tell you everything about my moral compass. But I also learned something practical. When everyone is vague, someone needs to translate. Sometimes that someone can be a stranger who popped into the chat by accident. Sometimes it's you. If you're listening and you've been the accidental mediator, congratulations. You have a very loud heart and questionable boundaries. Quick recap. Accidental ad, meme diplomacy, punctuation hot takes, and an unexpected stint as the chat's therapist. If this made you laugh, nodded too hard, or feel marginally better about your own texting sins, do me a chaotic favor. Leave a review on your podcast app and tell me your best friend group chat disaster. I read them, I judge them affectionately, and sometimes I steal them for future episodes, with names changed and dignity negotiated. Leave a review and tell the story. It fuels the chaos and helps other humans find this exact kind of comforting mess. If today's episode made you laugh, question humanity, or feel slightly better about your own life choices, then my job here is officially done. Stay chaotic. This escalated quickly. Bye for now. I turned my dad into a neighborhood dating legend. And no, I am not proud, but also I will absolutely accept the fame. This escalated quickly.
I'm Liv, your emotionally exhausted, chronically online host, and every week we talk about life, relationships, internet chaos, bad decisions, awkward moments, and all the things that spiral way faster than they should. Today, a story about Dad, dating apps, and my well-intentioned meddling that turned a perfectly ordinary neighborhood into a soap opera with more plot twists than a daytime TV commercial.
Section 1, the promise, the rules I broke, and the profile makeover. So here's the setup. My dad called me one Tuesday and said, Liv, can you help me make a dating profile for 1 week? He was charming and sincere, and I thought, how bad could 1 week be? Famous last words. I agreed because 2 things. A, he is delightfully confused by modern dating apps. He still thinks swipe right is a gesture you do at a baseball game. And B, he promised to let me run it for exactly 7 days. He also promised not to call me every time someone sent a heart emoji, which was a promise he did not keep.
Rule number 1, I immediately broke. No embellishments. I told myself I'd be honest. Then I uploaded photo number 1, a perfectly normal backyard shot of him grilling. He looked like a dad, but in a good way. And then I found an old fishing photo he swore was artsy and thought, that will get him likes. Spoiler, it got him inquiries from people who only wanted to discuss carp. Next thing I know, I'm curating his bio like I'm building a resume for a celebrity who only wants to score brunch dates.
The bio decisions were where the comic crime really began. We tried authentic quotes. You know, the kind that sound deep but are actually just leftover fortune cookie lines. One read, still learning, always grilling, which is both accurate and absolutely begging to be memed. Another said, looking for someone to share bad TV and good pie with. Cute, right? Except I didn't realize how many people take bad TV as an interview question. Also, we accidentally uploaded a candid from the duckface era, my dad making a face I deeply regret. That photo came with a 5-day flood of messages with emojis I had to Google. Then there were the photos I chose ironically. I thought a silly, clearly staged workout selfie would show he has a sense of humor. Instead, it attracted a man who sent 42 photos of his own biceps in triumphant succession. I tried for approachable father figure and accidentally clicked mysterious older gentleman filters. There was a whole evening where I realized the most authentic thing to do was literally just post a photo of his dog. That got more matches than human Liv's editing choices combined. First date disaster. The first guy who actually accepted a coffee date? Absolute chaos. He arrived and within 10 minutes mistook my couch for an open forum. He sat down, sighed, and said, so, tell me about your relationships. Like I was on the therapist's couch, not a person trying to eat a cookie and drink coffee in peace. Then he launched into a heated dissertation about kombucha. Kombucha! At 2 p.m, my living room became a TED Talk about fermented tea's socioeconomic impact. He also tried to recruit my dad into a wellness startup and asked if our family would be open to doing a promotional video featuring the grill. I said no on behalf of my dad and the privacy of my neighbors. He left convinced he'd won some deep emotional connection with me because I listened to his 20-minute tea manifesto. My dad? He sent a text that said simply, he has good teeth, and then called me at midnight asking why people think fermented drinks are a personality trait.
Section 2, texting translation and the unexpected twist. All right, texting. If you've ever managed someone else's DMs, you know this is where the language barrier is not just linguistic, it's cultural. Men interpret emojis in ways that deserve their own anthropology course. A simple wink emoji from one match turned into a proposal in his head. A pizza emoji was translated as, I will cook for you forever. I found myself writing things like, he enjoys walks, and the guy replied with a plan for a 10-day hiking excursion that included overnight gear and the phrase, if you're comfortable. Comfort was not established. Then the DM spiraled into full-blown community theater when one match recognized me from high school. Apparently, I was in someone's yearbook, and also apparently a USB stick of very awkward senior photos circulates forever. He messaged my dad's profile asking if his date could bring a friend who recognized Liv. He then showed up at my apartment 3 days later asking if we could discuss old memories and present intentions while leafing through a paper copy of the yearbook. I am now convinced yearbook photos are legally binding invitations. The unexpected twist? An old neighbor feud resurfaced. Turns out, a woman from down the block had a decades-old grudge against my dad. Long story involving a misplaced garden gnome and competitive community bingo. And she kept messaging my dad, insisting on dates that were actually passive-aggressive interrogations about lawn ornaments. Within 48 hours, my dad's inbox had everything. Curious romantics, kombucha entrepreneurs, a guy who wanted a grilling collab, and at least one neighbor who wanted to settle property disputes over espresso. Section 3, cleanup attempts, what made it worse, and my hot take. I tried to fix it. I wrote apologies that sounded like press releases. I closed DMs like I was locking a tiny, furious chicken coop. And I even posted a clearly labeled "For Serious Inquiries Only" photo, a tasteful headshot of my dad in a sweater vest that screamed responsible and available. It backfired spectacularly. The sweater vest attracted a knitting club. People messaged offering yarn recommendations and a starter pattern for empty nesters. My hot take after refereeing 7 days of this: letting someone else's dating life be your side project is a public service and a hazard. Boundaries are both a gift and a weapon. If you volunteer to run someone's profile, be kind but firm. And maybe don't use the duck face photo even if nostalgia clogs your brain. Also, men who treat dating like a hobby are often the most committed hobbyists. They love the equipment, the rules, and the unsolicited opinions about footwear. That's not inherently bad. It's just a vibe. Recap. I uploaded questionable photos, fielded a kombucha manifesto, translated emojis into entirely new life plans, survived a yearbook sighting, and accidentally reopened a neighborhood feud. Did I make my dad a legend? Yes. Did I learn anything? Also yes. Mainly, boundaries matter. Honesty is underrated, and sometimes the right photo is the dog's photo. If today's episode made you laugh, cringe, or consider hiding your yearbook under the mattress, do a small thing that feeds my ego and helps the show. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you subscribe. Tell me your worst profile makeover, your strangest DM translation, or if you've ever been mistaken for someone in your high school yearbook. Every review makes me feel like a lesser monster for agreeing to manage someone else's romantic destiny. Join the group chat vibe. And if you want to help my dad avoid kombucha entrepreneurs, send him polite gifts about boundaries. If today's episode made you laugh, question humanity, or feel slightly better about your own life choices, then my job here is officially done. This escalated quickly. Stay chaotic, where bad decisions make great stories. Today's episode, Outfit Roulette. I let my contacts dress me for a date, and it got wild. Okay, picture this. It's a Thursday night, my group chat is bored, somebody has 3 margaritas, and someone, definitely the one who uses too many skull emojis, drops a dare. Let your contacts pick everything for your date for a week. I laughed, I typed the proper eye roll emoji, and then I did the thing you do when you're tired and your boundaries are tired too. I said out loud, "Okay, fine. Do it." Ground rules. I promised myself I wouldn't do anything actually dangerous. No contacting exes, no flashing strangers, no quitting jobs. Everything had to be cosmetic or consensual. So the people could vote on 3 things: the outfit, the opening text I would send, and one on-the-spot move during the date. And yes, I put it to a poll. The poll included choices submitted by the group, which is the worst possible jury to have when you want to maintain dignity. That's how Outfit Roulette was born.
Round 1, shoes and the opening line. I uploaded 3 photo options of what I actually owned. Yes, responsibly sourced from my closet. And 3 text options. Option A was, "Hi, I'm Liv. Nice to meet you." Spoiler, boring. Option B was some aggressively cute gif and the line, "Is it just me or did it get brighter when you swiped right?" Subtle threat to humanity. Option C was from my friend Mallory's ex-frenemy, we'll call her Influence Brenda, which read, and I quote, "You must be a magician because every time I look at you, everyone else disappears." I put them up, I hit send, and the poll went live. Within minutes, my phone turned into a courtroom for bad ideas.
The votes came in like a jury who'd been dared to be dramatic. Shoes, the platform sneakers, yes, platform sneakers, won by a landslide. The text, a tie between the cheesy magician line and the GIF. The group decided to break the tie by adding a DM suggestion. Also, do a dramatic eyebrow arch when you say hi. At that point, I considered faking a sudden power outage and blaming it on Wi-Fi. But I didn't, because of course I didn't. Date 1, play-by-play. I show up in platform sneakers, a dress that could best be described as vintage chic if you squint, and a face that 30% felt like clever, 70% felt like who even scheduled this. I texted the gift thing because the group had made it into a meme in my chat and passive shame is a motivator. I walk in and the poor human across from me, let's call him Sam, immediately notices the shoes. He's polite, he smiles, and I can tell he's trying to parse whether he's in a rom-com or a thrift store runway show. I deliver the opening line like it's a rehearsed infomercial. You must be a magician. And then I try the eyebrow thing because the group demanded it. If you've never seen a grown woman attempt a dramatic eyebrow arch while trying not to trip on platform sneakers, I will spare you the visual, but the universe did not. Sam chokes on his latte, theatrically, so I later decide he's probably an actor, and a DM from my friend pops up mid-date. Tell him you're into interpretive pottery and you have a death metal cactus. I read it, I almost die of laughter, and I absolutely do not say it aloud. Consent caveat honored, everyone. I paused, I sipped, I tried to be present, and at some point the chat decided to escalate. And escalated it did. The group doubled down for round 2. Braver outfits, even weirder opening texts, and my personal favorite, the on-the-spot vote. For date 2, the poll included an option from my friend Jenna. Leave a sticky note on their phone that says, "Call me maybe." Because, of course. Someone else suggested I stage a surprise intervention mid-latte where a friend would storm the cafe and reveal a fake secret. I explicitly vetoed the fake secret idea because I remembered I have boundaries, and also because melodrama is expensive in terms of dignity. Still, the group sent selfies with evil grins and the chat kept piling on. Here's where it got weirdly real. Outsourcing felt like handing your life to a committee and then watching them decide whether you should wear socks with sandals. It illuminated something small and human. When you let other people pick for you, they pick what makes them laugh, what shocks them, or what reassures them about their own boring choices. That made me notice my own instincts, the little gut nudges I kept ignoring because the poll percentages were trending toward chaos. When I finally listened to myself, it was less about style and more about who I wanted to be while laughing at myself. That felt oddly liberating. Not to be dramatic, but also a bit of a revelation.
Highlight real time. Funniest DM, Mallory sending me a voice note of her 2-year-old saying, "Shoe tsunami," and then refusing to explain. Worst vote, the fringe jacket, which looked like a blanket with opinions. Accidental truth, the platform sneakers made me walk differently and smiling felt more performative than real until it wasn't. The moment I actually learned something, and by learned I mean mildly improved my life decisions by approximately 12%, was when I avoided the sticky note gag and instead told Sam the truth. Full disclosure, my friends dressed me like it was mid-2000s mall couture and I am a walking group chat experiment. He laughed, we both acknowledged the absurdity, and suddenly the date turned into a real conversation instead of a sketch. That was the win. Consent, honesty, and some shared embarrassment go a long way. So what's the takeaway from Outfit Roulette? Outsourcing your choices is delicious chaos. It makes for great stories, and it will absolutely give you content for your next group chat roast. But also, and this matters, keep your boundaries. Make the dare cosmetic. Keep people's dignity intact. Use it to laugh at your own mess instead of manufacturing somebody else's. You can be silly and still be kind. To yourself and to the people you're dating. Also, if your friends are voting, make sure at least one of them is slightly sober.
that helps. If today's episode made you laugh, question humanity, or feel slightly better about your own life choices, then my job here is officially done. If you loved this ridiculous experiment, do me a favor. Leave a review, tell me your own outsourced decision horror story, or send a poll of your own. I might be foolish enough to try it again. Seriously though, reviews help the show and also fuel my ego, which keeps the chaos alive. Stay chaotic. If today's episode made you laugh, question humanity, or feel slightly better about your own life choices, then my job here is officially done. Thanks for listening. You were delightful, chaotic, and slightly dangerous in all the best ways. Stay chaotic. I declared war on small talk and promised myself one brutal rule for 7 first dates. No white lies, no cushion phrases, full honesty. What could possibly go wrong? This escalated quickly. Okay, hook time. I announced to a room of very sober friends that I would be radically, mercilessly honest on 7 first dates and post the receipts. It was equal parts social experiment and a midlife crisis that started at age 32. I imagined answers that would free me, like honesty yoga. Instead, I mostly invented new levels of awkward, but also chaos is content. So here we are. Promise and rules. I gave myself a very small rule book because apparently I like structure in my self-sabotage. Rule 1, no white lies. If he asks if I like his playlist, I answer honestly. Rule 2, no softening phrases. Ditch the that's great when it absolutely is not. Rule 3, consent is still consent. Being honest does not mean being mean. Stakes, if I flubbed, I'd owe my friend's brunch and a therapy level apology. I signed off on this like a real idiot with a coffee stain on my manifesto. Date 1, he ordered 3 appetizers like we were buying a vineyard. I told him, you ordering the whole tapas menu on date 1 is bold and also a red flag that you may be auditioning for a role in my future financial regret. He laughed. I laughed. Then neither of us stopped talking about portion sizes for the rest of the night. I later texted him a photo of my bank account balance and he unmatched me like it was an MMA weigh-in. Lesson? Honesty can be efficient, but also deeply unromantic. Date 2 was a masterpiece of accidental insult. He had a haircut that looked like it lost a fight with a hedge trimmer. When he asked, "Do you like it?" I said, very honestly, "It's adventurous in a way that makes me want to ask if you can hear different birds now." He stared like I'd described his aura and then asked if I could recommend a barber. We exchanged 5 texts later that said nothing of emotional content and everything about barbershop availability. That night I learned honesty without tact can get you into a decidedly platonic territory called barber arranger. Now things escalated with dates 3 and 4. Date 3, he launched into a 10-minute passionate speech about his startup that pivoted more times than a confused GPS. At minute 3, I asked, "Is this the elevator pitch or the entire building?" He laughed like I'd given him a badge of honor. Then he confessed that the startup was actually a blog with 3 posts. I said, so you're incubating a brand. He cried a little into his kale salad. I didn't mean to be cruel. I was trying to be concise. But wow, I became both truth teller and accidental therapist. Date 4 almost ended in ghosting, but in a way that was melodramatic and deserved. He confessed he still had a job with sort of flexible hours, and then asked me if I thought cats should have middle names. I said, sincerely, only if they plan to run for office. He went silent. Then he texted the next day. That comment made me rethink everything. I responded, "Good. I'm demanding existential crises now." Surprisingly, he came back for a second date. Sometimes the chaos loops into curiosity. Dates 5 and 6 were the emotional roller coaster portion of the experiment. Date 5. The plan backfired spectacularly. I told him I don't like gym selfies and that I find them performative. He took it as a personal threat to his cardio identity and swiped left mid-espresso. Brutal, but honest. Then, date 6 surprised me. I admitted I had 0 idea how to pronounce a musician he loved. Honestly confessed I'd pretended to for months. And instead of abhorrence, he lit up, grateful someone admitted a tiny lie.
We bonded over pronunciation fails and ate dessert we absolutely did not need. That one landed because vulnerability is a rare currency.
Date 7 was my mic drop. I kept the rule, but softened the delivery. Instead of theatrical bluntness, I used curiosity, and real curiosity, honestly. He asked, "What's your deal with honesty?" I said, "I feel like we all bring RSVP versions of ourselves to dates. Trimmed, filtered, and on the plus side, maybe we're auditioning. I wanted to see what happens if I show up with the director's cut." He admitted he was tired of small talk too, and told me his honest fear, that he'd accidentally mirror someone until he forgot who he was. We both laughed at how dramatic our anxiety sounded in daylight, and we walked out feeling oddly human and normal. That, not the insults or the roast comments, got the real connection.
Hot take time. Radical honesty isn't a license to be a jerk. And it's not a dating hack either. It's a mirror. We pretend to be cooler than we are because the social algorithm rewards polish and curated narratives. But people actually crave small vulnerabilities. They don't always want brutal truth bombs. They want to know the real story behind your forced smile. So my hot take is, honesty lands best when it's gentle, curious, and shared, not thrown like a pie into someone's face. Also, hot takes love drama, so there's that. Quick recap. Date 1 taught me honesty can cause economic separation. Dates 2 through 4 were a mixtape of insults, tears, and barber appointments. Date 5 ghosted me into a healthier bank account. Date 6 gave me a sweet, awkward dessert. And Date 7 gave me human-level intimacy with none of the bubbly grandeur. The real win? I stopped pretending I liked things I didn't. And, more importantly, I started asking curious follow-up questions instead of polishing my canned answers. If you loved watching me commit social felonies for content, hit subscribe and leave a review. Tell me your worst first date moment, or a time you told the truth and regretted, or didn't. I read them aloud next week. And yes, juicy stories get dramatic reads. Also, if you want me to test another chaotic life experiment, say extreme ghosting with receipts, write it in a review and convince me to be an idiot again. Please and thank you. If today's episode made you laugh, question humanity, or feel slightly better about your own life choices, then my job here is officially done. Stay chaotic. I turned my dating life into a spreadsheet. No, seriously. Columns, color coding, formulas, the whole sad stationery store fantasy. And before you judge, yes, I'm aware this is peak millennial pathology, but also hear me out. It made for the best train wreck decisions I've ever documented. This is This Escalated Quickly. And today we are quantifying heartbreak with conditional formatting. Hook, I promise a chaotic, honest play-by-play. If you ever wanted to know what happens when revenge filters meet passive-aggressive calendar invites, stay tuned. I am emotionally exhausted, chronically online, and apparently a spreadsheet hobbyist. Section 1, the long story short, is this. I snapped after a season of ghosting, mixed signals, and that cursed time someone texted me, "We should talk," and then sent 6 memes followed by absolute silence. You know the type. They vanish, reappear with vague empathy, then vanish again like a Netflix show people only talk about when spoilers are allowed. I realized my brain was trying to keep tabs on a full inbox of emotional ambiguity, and my coping mechanism was spreadsheets. Not therapy, not a journal, but columns. I started with a simple sheet. Column A, name. Column B, last texted, with a timestamp, because trauma loves timestamps. Column C, emoji rating. Yes, an emoji score from soccer ball, no chemistry, to 2 hearts, maybe spark. Column D, red flags. Long drop-down menu. Flakiness, ghosting, bad dog kidnapper vibes. Kidding on that last one, but you get my point. Then I added column E, ROI of texts. Literally how many words I typed versus the effort returned. Because nothing says healing like calculating your emotional ROI. Section 2, the spreadsheet reveal. I leaned into the absurd. Conditional formatting turns cells bright, tragic red when someone ghosted for more than 48 hours. I created a revenge filter named Do Not Reply that would gray out a row if someone used the phrase, "I'm just really busy right now," which is apparently code for, "I am emotional furniture and you are not the couch."
I added a sentimental column called Said They Loved Me Once, Yes, No, because database normalization is how we process trauma. The best part? I gave each contact a little emoji badge. Winky face equals questionable consent to flirt. Sunglasses equals performative aloofness. Clapping hands equals gaslighting disguised as compliments. I also built a pivot table called Most Time Wasted and, for a laugh, a chart titled Text Investment versus Likelihood of a Real Date. Spoiler, the line plummets faster than my self-control at an open bar. And then I added a final micro feature, a passive-aggressive status update generator. It would draft a calendar invite with the subject line, Status, please explain, and politely set the location to their last known emotional availability. Because passive-aggressive calendar invites are the adult version of leaving a note on the fridge, but with RSVP tracking.
Section 3, Escalation Stories. This is where the comedy turned into cosmic chaos. Example 1, the accidental email blast. I meant to send a single therapeutic spreadsheet entry to myself. Somehow, I hit share and auto-completed the contact list. Suddenly, 30 people, including a very confused coworker who once flirted at a conference, received a document titled Dating Metrics Q3. Their replies were a beautiful mix of emojis and, honestly, helpful suggestions.
Example 2, the calendar invite to an ex. I was testing my status generator and sent a mock invite titled Closure to an old flame. Except I forgot that their calendar auto-accepts invites. For 3 weeks, my phone politely reminded me that closure was happening on Tuesdays, which felt like emotional Groundhog Day. They showed up to a coffee that was only in my calendar. They did not receive the memo that it was a passive-aggressive spreadsheet experiment. Awkward doesn't even start to cover it.
Example 3, the do not open DM. I flagged a DM thread as do not open because it contained the single most confusing blend of mixed signals known to humankind. Of course, the person I flagged about screenshotted my note and sent it back with the caption, "Oh wow, thanks for the transparency." This is how my emotion management tool turned into passive-aggressive content fodder, and several mutual friends got involved like it was a soap opera voting round. At some point, between color codes and accidental invitations, it stopped being funny. I found myself refreshing to see if a cell had turned red, as if my worth could be determined by a hex code. The spreadsheet had become less of a gag and more of a scoreboard for things I couldn't control. That's when I had a meltdown. Very online, very dramatic, and then very, very honest. I admitted to myself that I was using structure to avoid messy conversations. I was quantifying feelings so I didn't have to feel them. Hot take and lessons. Spreadsheets are delightful and they make great stories, but they are not a substitute for boundaries or direct communication. If you're using a tracker to punish someone, you're probably avoiding a hard conversation you owe both of you. Also, emoji readings are fun, but they can be dehumanizing if you forget there's an actual person behind the shady winky face. Set boundaries, ask for clarity, and if someone ghosts you, it's okay to archive the row and archive the person from your life, metaphorically speaking. And if you love metaphors, actually archive their number. Quick recap. I turned my dating life into a spreadsheet. It made me laugh. Then it made things worse in very specific adult ways. And then, predictably, it made me look inward. If you have a ridiculous rule-based dating hack, I fully expect the 3-text rule or the emoji economy, send it my way. Share the chaos, the spreadsheets, the passive-aggressive calendar invites. And if you liked today's episode, take literally 2 seconds to leave a review. Your 5-star life advice fuels my next bad decision. Stay chaotic. If today's episode made you laugh, question humanity, or feel slightly better about your own life choices, then my job here is officially done. I'm Liv, your emotionally exhausted, chronically online host. And remember, this escalated quickly. Stay chaotic. Last week, I let my phone speak for me. No filters, no thinking, no soul searching. I handed my dignity to predictive text and hit send. You want a wedding proposal? You want an accidental therapy session? You'll get both, and a very confused barista cameo. This escalated quickly, obviously. Here's the setup and the rules, because yes, I am legally obligated to explain my poor life choices. Rule 1. For 7 days, every outgoing reply on texts, DMs, and dating apps had to be composed using only my phone's predictive suggestions, the little gray words above the keyboard, and I could not add or backspace. Rule 2. I anonymized people, changed details, and if anyone was actually hurt or offended, I apologized and explained the bit. This was meant to be a comedic experiment and a cautionary tale, not a relationship or privacy dumpster fire. Rule 3. If the phone composed something catastrophic, I owned it, which, spoiler, was most of the week. The first day was textbook chaos. I opened with what I thought would be warm, low-stakes replies, flirting light. Instead, my phone casually gifted an accidental pet name. Someone I'd matched with became my pumpkin spice of questionable life choices via autocomplete. To them, confusing, but adorable. To me, mortifying. Then there was the message where the phone decided we were already way deeper than a Saturday brunch should allow and suggested, and I quote, "I have been waiting my whole life to tell you the apartment smells like hope." I did not intend to text poetry at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday, but there it was, floating in the message bubble like a dove that immediately got lost. The replies ranged from confused emojis to someone asking, very seriously, "Are you okay?" Which is fair. Then things escalated. By day 3, my phone apparently believed I was starring in a rom-com where I revealed trauma at precisely the wrong moment. I sent what the keyboard confidently thought was an empathetic, deep reveal, and it came out as a variant of I love you that read somewhere between a wedding vow and a text meant for a stray dog. The receiver responded with, "Wait, do you mean that as like a friend I love or a romantic I love?" Imagine trying to explain that the answer was both? None? My phone betrayed me? It devolved into a string of clarifying messages. And then, of course, an accidental "you are my person, no take-back" suggestion dropped in because predictive text is a drama queen. The panic was real, and the cleanup involved coffee, too many apologies, and a heartfelt message I actually meant 2 days later. The lesson? Auto-emotion is reckless. Okay, hot take time. Why do we outsource vulnerability? Part of it is convenience. We've outsourced everything to our phones, from taxis to sad playlists. But more than that, predictive text gives us a safety buffer. It lets us say big things without signing up for the full emotional consequences. Here's the greasy underside. Using tech as a vulnerability shortcut can mask boundary problems. If you let a device say "I miss you" and then ghost the conversation, that's not cute. That's emotional algorithmic baiting. My experiment revealed people's red flags quickly. When someone doubled down on a weird reply, matched my weirdness, or gently corrected the accidental drama, you suddenly learned how they react under confusion. People who replied with humor or a clarifying question? Cool. People who weaponized it? Not cool. The real hot take? Outsourcing feelings is a symptom, not a solution. If you regularly need your phone to courage up for emotional labor, maybe pause and ask, who's doing the work of connecting here? Who's being protected? And who's being manipulated? That said, my phone did accidentally write a lovely sentence once, so don't at me. Now the climactic blow-up. There was a thread that nearly led to a real-life meet or a soft, humiliating breakup. Picture this. Someone suggested coffee. I let autocomplete answer, and it constructed a response that sounded like a breakup letter mixed with an RSVP. It included a sentence about not wanting to waste your hopeful energy, and then, because predictive text has a sense of humor, ended with, "But I would like a croissant." The other person read that and decided I was either deeply poetic or clinically indecisive, and asked for clarity. I could have just explained the experiment, but in true chaotic fashion, I panicked and sent another auto-reply that suggested we run to the train of happiness together. At that point, the thread went full sitcom, punctuated by my actual arrival at the coffee shop 5 minutes later, where the barista, bless them,
asked if I was ordering for myself or for two. I lied. I ordered a croissant. They told me to stay real, and I laughed so hard I nearly cried. The meeting never happened. The thread dissolved into an odd friendship that exists mostly in brunch envy and occasional meme sharing.
So, what did I learn? Besides that predictive text has an opinion about my love life. 1. Honesty still matters. Accidents are funny, but they don't replace sincere communication. 2. Set boundaries before you let automation do emotional work. If you're trying pranks or experiments, get consent where possible and anonymize. 3. When someone reacts kindly to your chaos, hold on to them. Human empathy beats clever autocorrect. And 4. Laugh at yourself. Because if you can't giggle about sending "I will marry your dog" in a moment of weakness, are you even living? Practical takeaway. Turn off aggressive autocomplete settings for sensitive conversations. Draft first, then send. And maybe keep your phone out of proposal range. Also, if you try this at home, don't be my therapist, be my friend, and maybe sign a waiver. This was all done with care, and with the promise that no one's private life was broadcasted or exploited. Roast therapy complete. Quick recap. I handed over conversation control. The phone wrote things I never would have. Chaos ensued, and I learned that honesty, boundaries, and a good sense of humor are non-negotiable in modern romance. If this made you laugh, cringe, or feel marginally better about your last reply all disaster, then mission accomplished. Now do me a favor. Leave a review, tell me your own auto-text horror stories in the comments or DMs, and share this episode with a friend who once texted their boss instead of their bestie. I want to hear the worst. Leave a review, it helps the show and gives us more material. Stay chaotic. If today's episode made you laugh, question humanity, or feel slightly better about your own life choices, then my job here is officially done. Next week, I might let a microwave timer pick my emoji responses for 48 hours. Spoiler, it will be tragic. This escalated quickly. Stay chaotic. Okay, full confession right up front. I invented emergencies to see who would actually show up. Not a metaphor, a literal staged crisis with escalating ridiculousness. If that sounds terrible, you're right. But also, the receipts are wild. Here's the deal. Today, I'll tell you about 3 experiments I performed, because apparently I am a very online person with a questionable moral compass. We'll go through the lost kitten meltdown, the fake job interview disaster, and the plant funeral sob session. You'll meet the ghosters who sent emojis, the friends who sent help, well, virtual snacks, and the one person who drove across town with a ladder and actual snacks. I'll roast myself, deliver one hot take about emotional neighbor, and leave you with a safe but savage takeaway. Entertaining chaos, 0 academic rigor. Why did I start the crisis tests? Honestly, boredom and curiosity, and a tiny streak of petty experimentation. Also, there was this creeping adult anxiety where I kept asking, who would drop everything and help me if I needed it? Not the best version of me, I admit. So I wrote rules. Keep everything low stakes, reversible, never involve strangers or public safety, and absolutely do not create scenarios that could cause real harm. The point was to see who did emotional labor without prompting, not to traumatize anyone. Still, bad idea. Iconic results. Test 1. The lost kitten meltdown. I posted an increasingly dramatic group chat. Guys, I think a kitten is stuck under my deck. Please come help me look. I sent pictures of a suspicious pile of laundry and a very believable fake Mew noise recording. Texts poured in like, OMG, are you okay? Followed by people immediately disappearing into GIF land. Half the group sent heart emojis, and a single person sent a doorbell sticker, which felt like the emotional equivalent of a shrug. Meanwhile, one friend, Maya, texted, be there in 20, and actually arrived with a flashlight, lint roller, and a granola bar. She crawled under my deck, found nothing, and then sat on the porch and listened to me narrate my existential terror until I calmed down. It was ridiculous and tender, and also embarrassing because I had to explain the ruse. Her face when she realized she'd helped a fake emergency? Priceless.
Test 2. The fake job interview disaster. I told my circle I had a last-minute in-person interview in 2 hours, and my hair and outfit were in literal chaos. Everyone loves a glam session opportunity, right? I sent increasingly absurd pleas. Car won't start. Outfit ruined by mysterious coffee. Need lipstick ASAP. Responses ranged from a supportive, "You got this," to a man who replied with an unrelated meme and then changed the subject. The winners, one friend who offered to lend me a blazer and another who texted a 5-minute pep talk and a playlist. The loser? The ex who sent a single clapping hands emoji while I described crying into a shirt. The funniest part? One guy showed up expecting it to be real and brought a protein bar and a ladder. He thought I'd need the ladder for a wardrobe emergency. He stayed for 90 minutes, helped me tape a hem, and we ate the protein bar like it was a tiny medieval feast. I did not expect a ladder to be involved in my dating life.
Test 3, the plant funeral sob session. This one was my most dramatic stunt, and I may have been personally offended by my own houseplants. I posted a slow, grieving voicemail and a black and white selfie of me looking tragic beside a clearly dead succulent. I wrote, "I can't believe he's gone. I loved him." The responses were predictable. The usual flurry of "so sorry," followed by people disappearing into hot take land. But then, in the corner of the chat, someone, no, not a lover, sent me a small watering can emoji and asked if I wanted them to come over. I said yes, expecting more performative grief support. Instead, they showed up with soil, a tiny shovel, and a potted replacement, like a plant funeral team. They sat on my balcony while I sobbed over the spiritual death of a plant I'd named Ken. It was absurd and sweet, and it made me realize how gestures beat texts every time. Also, Ken's replacement is thriving. Small miracles.
Hot take and full confession time. These tests told me more about emotional labor than I wanted to admit. People who check in with elaborate words but never show up are exhausting. People who show up with weird tools and no questions asked are gold. But, and this is important, manufacturing drama to measure care is still a crappy way to build relationships. It trains you to value spectacle over steady presence and invites bad patterns. If you're doing this because you're insecure about who's in your corner, try asking for small, honest favors first. Tell someone you're having a tough day, or invite them for coffee and say, "I need you." It's less messy and way kinder than weaponizing a fake crisis.
Recap time. 3 escalating tests, 3 kinds of responses. The emoji senders who mean well but are emotionally punk drunk. The virtual supporters who DM playlists and GIFs. And the MVPs who show up with a ladder, snacks, or a replacement plant. My takeaway? Show up energy is rare and worth celebrating, but don't create problems to find people. Practice asking for help. Reward the people who help you. Bring them snacks, send them a thank you note, and don't use them as data points in your social experiments. If you liked hearing about my moral gray area, hit the review button. Tell me if I'm a monster or a relatable disaster. Either way, it fuels the show. If today's episode made you laugh, question humanity, or feel slightly better about your own life choices, then my job here is officially done. Leave a review, say something petty, say something kind, or just rate the chaos. I'll read them and judge affectionately. Remember, don't stage dangerous pranks, be honest when you can, and if someone shows up with a ladder and snacks, marry them, or at least keep them in your contacts. Stay chaotic.